Daniel Carter pushed open the door of his two-bedroom apartment in Renton at 10:45 on a Thursday night, every muscle in his body begging for collapse. The walk from his truck to the third-floor landing felt like climbing Everest in steel-toed boots. 15 hours replacing the HVAC system in Meridian Technologies' North Tower. Third consecutive 60-hour week this month. His blue work uniform carried the stench of machine oil and sweat, the knees stained dark from crawling through ventilation shafts, his hands still tingling from the vibration of power tools that never seemed to shut off. Emma was sleeping over at his sister Beth's place until morning. The apartment should have been silent, dark, empty. Water was running in the kitchen. Dishes clinked against porcelain. Footsteps moved across the tile floor he'd installed himself 2 years ago when the landlord refused to fix the cracked linoleum. Daniel's pulse kicked into overdrive, adrenaline cutting through exhaustion like a blade. Someone was inside his home. He moved down the hallway without breathing, each step deliberate and silent despite the weight of his work boots. The umbrella near the coat rack wasn't much of a weapon, but better than nothing. His hand closed around the metal shaft, testing the weight. Kitchen lights spilled into the darkened living room, casting long shadows that danced with each movement of whoever stood at his sink. A woman, back turned, dark hair falling loose past her shoulders. White blouse that probably cost more than his monthly rent. A pair of expensive heels lay discarded beside the counter, as if she'd been here long enough to get comfortable. She turned. Daniel froze completely, the umbrella slipping from suddenly numb fingers. Sophia Bennett, CEO of Meridian Technologies, the woman who'd built a $280 million company from nothing. The woman employees whispered about in break rooms, calling her the Glacier, for the way she could fire someone without a flicker of emotion crossing her face. The woman Daniel had only ever seen from a distance during quarterly all-hands meetings, standing at podiums in $1,000 suits, her voice crisp and emotionless as she discussed profit margins and strategic initiatives. Standing in his kitchen, at his sink, washing his dishes. The absurdity of it punched through his exhaustion like a shot of adrenaline. Her voice came out soft, almost gentle, too controlled, like she was delivering bad news to a terminal patient and trying to cushion the blow. "Mr. Carter, I know you weren't expecting me." The formality of it struck him as almost funny. Almost, if his heart wasn't hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" The words came out harder than he'd intended, but rage was replacing shock now. This woman who'd never spoken to him, who walked past maintenance workers like they were furniture, who represented everything wrong with corporate America, standing in his kitchen like she belonged here. Sophia set down the plate she'd been washing with the kind of care someone might use handling a museum artifact. Her face remained composed, professional, the same mask she probably wore in board meetings. But her eyes told a different story. Not surprise, not embarrassment. Regret. "I came here to tell you the truth about what's been happening to you at Meridian Technologies. About why you've been suffering." Her voice wavered on the last word, the first crack in that professional veneer. Daniel watched her hands grip the edge of his sink, knuckles whitening. "And Daniel, what I'm about to tell you will break your heart." A bitter laugh escaped him before he could stop it. No humor in it, just the sound of a man who'd been pushed too far and was too tired to care about consequences. "You're the CEO of a company worth hundreds of millions. You don't make house calls. You don't wash employees' dishes at 11 at night. So what is this really? Some kind of PR stunt? Undercover boss episode I didn't sign up for? Sophia turned to face him fully, and for the first time, Daniel really looked at her, really saw her. The dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. The way strands of hair had escaped from what had probably been a tight bun hours ago. The slight tremor in her hands as she brushed them against her slacks. She moved to his kitchen table, the cheap one he'd bought at a yard sale 3 years ago, and sat down. Her shoulders sagged in a way Daniel had never seen from the glacier, a gesture of surrender, of exhaustion, of something that looked dangerously close to defeat. Please sit down. I'd rather stand, and it's Mr. Carter to you. The formality felt important, a way to maintain distance, to remember she wasn't a person in his kitchen, but the embodiment of a system that had been grinding him down for 14 months. Silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Sophia's composure fractured just slightly, hairline cracks spreading across that professional mask. You're right. I've been blind. Willfully blind. She pulled out the chair across from where he stood and lowered herself into it like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. I built this company with my own hands. 13 years ago, I was 22 with $30,000. A Stanford dropout with a dream of creating a workplace where people mattered. I worked 100-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of a normal life. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people who actually make my company run. Daniel wanted to stay angry. Anger was safe. Anger kept him from feeling the hope that was trying to claw its way up his throat. But something in her eyes, raw and vulnerable and utterly sincere, made it hard to hold on to. 4 weeks ago, I was reviewing financial records, budget allocations that didn't match up. I started digging, and what I found... She pulled papers from a leather bag Marcus hadn't noticed sitting beside the table. Spreadsheets, payroll documents, employee records. Daniel, do you know why you work 15-hour shifts while other technicians work 8? The shift in tone caught him off guard. Direct, pointed, like she was cross-examining him in a deposition. Because Owen says we're short-staffed. You're not short-staffed. Sophia pushed the papers across his table. Daniel moved closer despite himself, his eyes scanning names and numbers that didn't make sense at first. Rebecca Foster. Employee ID 4782. HVAC technician. Hired 14 months ago. Salary $47,000 annually. Bank deposits to Wells Fargo account ending in 8291. William Grant. Employee ID 4791. Electrical technician. Hired 14 months ago. Salary $49,000 annually. Bank deposits to Chase account ending in 4405. Trevor Hudson. Employee ID 4805. Systems technician. Hired 14 months ago. Salary $48,500 annually. Bank deposits to Bank of America account ending in 7732. These 3 people don't exist. Sophia's voice had gone flat, clinical, like she was reading a coroner's report. Owen Harris has been reporting phantom employees to corporate, collecting their salaries and making you cover the workload of 4 people. Daniel felt his legs go weak. He sank into the chair without deciding to, his hands reaching for the papers like they might reveal this was all some terrible mistake, some misunderstanding. But the numbers didn't lie. $144,500 per year times 14 months. $169,250. Owen has been stealing from this company, from you, for 14 months. Daniel couldn't breathe. The kitchen walls felt like they were closing in. 14 months of wondering why he was always exhausted, why he couldn't keep up, Why every shift felt like drowning. 14 months of missing Lily's school plays because he was replacing air handlers that should have been William Grant's job. Missing parent-teacher conferences because he was rewiring electrical systems that should have been Rebecca Foster's responsibility. Missing bedtime stories because he was troubleshooting HVAC controls that should have been Trevor Hudson's problem. But Rebecca and William and Trevor didn't exist, had never existed, were just names on paper funneling money into Owen Harris's bank accounts while Daniel destroyed his body trying to do the impossible. That's not all. Sophia's voice pulled him back from the edge of whatever dark place his mind was spiraling toward. She slid another set of documents across the table. 2 folders, one red, one blue. Your performance reviews. The ones that have kept you from getting promoted for 14 months. Daniel didn't want to look. Knew what they said. Had memorized every word of those reviews, had read them late at night when Lily was asleep, trying to figure out what he was doing wrong, how he could improve, what he needed to fix. But Sophia opened the red folder first. Official Performance Review, Daniel Carter. Error rate, 12%. Productivity, 78% of standard. Overall assessment. Meets requirements but needs improvement. Recommendation, not suitable for promotion at this time. The words were knives. Had been knives for 14 months, cutting into him every time he read them. Proof that he wasn't good enough, would never be good enough, that he was failing Lily by being mediocre at the one thing that was supposed to provide for her. Sophia closed the red folder and opened the blue one. Actual performance data. Daniel Carter. Error rate 0.3%. Highest performing technician in company. Productivity 340% of standard. Customer satisfaction 4.9 out of 5.0. Comparative ranking exceeds all 15 key performance indicators. Daniel stared at the numbers, read them again. Again. They didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Because if these numbers were real, if this data was accurate, then he wasn't mediocre, wasn't failing, wasn't barely scraping by. He was exceptional. Owen has been falsifying your performance reviews for 14 months. Why? His voice broke on the single syllable. 14 months of self-doubt crystallizing into one question that demanded an answer. Sophia leaned forward, and something in her expression shifted. Not pity, something harder, something that looked like rage held under tight control. Because you're good at your job, Daniel. Too good. If corporate leadership saw your real performance numbers, you'd be promoted immediately. You'd be earning what you deserve, making decisions, having authority. And Owen would lose his cash cow, someone skilled enough to do the work of 4 people without complaining, someone who believed the lie that he wasn't good enough, so he kept pushing harder, working longer, never asking questions. The truth of it hit Daniel like a freight train. He stood up suddenly, the chair scraping against the floor, and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. Seattle's lights glittered in the distance. All those people living normal lives where their bosses didn't lie to them, where their hard work was actually recognized, where they didn't sacrifice everything for nothing. How long have you known? The question came out like an accusation, because that's what it was. I discovered the anomalies 6 weeks ago. It took 3 weeks to gather irrefutable evidence, legal proof that would stand up to scrutiny. I confronted Owen 5 days ago, suspended him immediately pending investigation. And you waited until now to tell me? Daniel spun around, and he didn't care that he was yelling at the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company in his own kitchen. didn't care that she could destroy his career with a phone call, didn't care about anything except the fact that she'd known for 6 weeks while he'd worked himself to death thinking he was failing. Sophia flinched but didn't look away, didn't make excuses, just sat there and took it. I needed legal proof before I could act. And Daniel, Owen isn't the only one. This is happening in 3 other departments. 9 employees total being exploited the same way you are. I needed to understand the full scope before I could move. Daniel turned back to the window because looking at her was too hard, because her explanation made sense, and he hated that it made sense. Hated that she'd been protecting the company and other victims while he'd been drowning. Why are you here? Why didn't you send HR an email, have your lawyers handle this? The question hung in the air between them. Daniel heard Sophia stand, heard her footsteps on his cheap linoleum floor, felt her presence beside him at the window, even though she didn't touch him. When I saw your file, when I saw what's been done to you, I realized something. Her voice had gone soft, vulnerable in a way that made Daniel actually turn to look at her. The glacier was gone. Just a woman standing in his kitchen, looking like she was carrying a weight too heavy for one person to bear. You have a daughter, Daniel. A 9-year-old girl who barely sees her father because he's too busy being exploited by my company. And your wife. She paused, and Daniel nodded stiffly, not trusting his voice. Jessica passed 4 years ago. You've been raising Lily alone while working yourself to death for people who don't appreciate you? For a system I created that I allowed to exist through my negligence. Tears were forming in Sophia's eyes now, and Daniel had never seen the glacier cry, had never imagined she was capable of it. I sat in my office last night looking at your address, and I thought about calling, sending an email, having HR schedule a meeting. But none of that felt like enough. She gestured around his modest kitchen, at the dishes she'd washed, at the floors she'd swept, at the coffee maker she'd cleaned. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know showing up here is intrusive and probably inappropriate. But I needed you to see that I know, that I'm not hiding behind my title or my lawyers, that I'm willing to stand in your kitchen and face what my company has done to you. The sincerity in her voice cracked something open in Daniel's chest. Anger and hope and grief all mixing together into something he couldn't name, couldn't process, could barely survive feeling. Numbers don't show you a man collapsing on his couch every night because he's too exhausted to put his daughter to bed properly. They don't show you someone skipping meals because groceries and rent in the same week is tight. Sophia's words painted a picture of his life with uncomfortable accuracy, made him wonder how much research she'd done, how deeply she'd looked into the wreckage Owen's lies had created. Daniel wanted to hate her, wanted to blame her for all of it because she was the CEO and the buck stopped with her. But the woman standing in his kitchen wasn't some untouchable corporate executive. She was human, flawed, trying desperately to fix something she'd broken through negligence rather than malice. I don't need your pity. The words came out quiet but firm, a line in the sand. Good, because I'm not offering pity. I'm offering respect and a partnership. Sophia stepped closer, and Daniel could see the exhaustion written into every line of her face. Could see someone who'd been awake for days trying to untangle a mess of her own making. You know this company inside and out, Daniel. You know where the problems are because you've lived them. Help me fix this. Not just for you, but for everyone else stuck in the same trap. Daniel crossed his arms, a defensive posture he couldn't quite abandon even as his anger started to fade into something more complicated. And if I say no? Then you say no. I'll still make the changes, still deal with Owen and anyone else who's been exploiting my employees, still ensure you're compensated for what was done to you, but it won't be as effective without someone who understands what it's really like down there. She met his eyes, and the honesty in her gaze was almost painful to witness. I need you, Daniel. The company needs you. And whether you believe it or not, I think you need this too. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, but exhaustion was catching up to him now that the adrenaline was fading. Exhaustion and the crushing weight of 14 months of lies finally being exposed. 14 months of thinking he was failing when he'd been succeeding. 14 months of believing he wasn't enough when he'd been more than enough all along. I need time to think. Sophia nodded immediately, relief crossing her features. Take all the time you need. I'll have a formal offer sent over tomorrow. Special advisor to CEO on reform initiatives. Temporary position, 3 months. 72,000 salary, 40-hour weeks maximum. Real medical and dental benefits. Education fund for Lily. No obligation to accept. She moved toward the door, gathering her bag and her discarded heels, but she paused at the threshold, looking back at the photo on his refrigerator. Daniel and Lily at the park last summer, Lily's gap-toothed grin on full display as they both laughed at something he couldn't remember anymore. She looks like you. Same eyes. Daniel felt himself soften despite everything. People say she has her mother's smile. I'm sorry for your loss. I can't imagine raising a child alone. The sympathy in Sophia's voice sounded genuine, not performative, not the kind of empty condolence people offered at funerals. Do you have kids? No. No husband, no kids, no life outside work, really. The admission came out matter of fact, but Daniel heard the loneliness underneath it, recognized it because he'd been living with a different kind of loneliness for 4 years, the kind that came from losing your partner and never quite figuring out how to be whole again.
For what it's worth, what you did tonight, coming here, most CEOs wouldn't.
Sophia smiled, small and sad.
Most CEOs didn't build their company from nothing, didn't start as the underdog. I used to be you, Daniel. I just forgot.
The words hung in the air between them, a moment of connection, brief, genuine, human. Then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her, and Daniel was alone in his kitchen with performance reviews that told 2 different stories and a job offer that felt too good to be true. He stood there for a long time, holding the blue folder with his real performance data, and for the first time in 14 months, felt something other than exhausted. He felt hope. 2 in the morning found Daniel sitting at his laptop, the glow of the screen the only light in his living room. Sleep was impossible. His mind kept circling back to Sophia's revelations, to Owen's theft, to 14 months of lies finally exposed. But underneath the anger and shock, a different question was forming. If this had happened to him, how many others were suffering the same way? Daniel logged into the Meridian Technologies employee portal, his fingers moving across the keyboard with purpose. He started cross-referencing data. Who else reported to Owen? What were their work hours? Were there patterns he'd missed because he'd been too focused on surviving each day? He found a forum post from 8 months ago, buried in the company's internal message board. Anonymous user. Simple message that Daniel had probably scrolled past a dozen times without really seeing it. Anyone else in operations working insane hours? Feels like we're short-staffed, but management says the budget is fine. Daniel's heart rate picked up. He created a reply under his own username, not caring about anonymity anymore. I need to talk to you. It's important. More important than you know. He hit send and sat back, watching the cursor blink on the screen. No response would come until morning at the earliest, but Daniel felt like he'd just done something, taken an action instead of just absorbing blow after blow. His phone buzzed at 7 a.m., a message from an unknown number. This is Tech Guru 206 from the forum. Got your message. Not sure what this is about, but something in your post felt urgent. Coffee at Pike Street Starbucks, 8 a.m.? Daniel typed back immediately. I'll be there. The man sitting at the corner table looked young, maybe 28, with the kind of nervous energy that came from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. He wore a Meridian Technologies IT department polo, his laptop bag slung over the back of his chair. Daniel Carter. Garrett Mitchell, network technician. I posted that forum thing 8 months ago when I was too tired to remember not to complain on company platforms. How many hours are you working? Garrett laughed, but there was no humor in it. 60 a week? 70? I stopped counting. Owen says we're understaffed, says budget constraints mean we can't hire anyone new. Says if I want to move up, I need to prove I can handle the workload. Daniel felt something cold settle in his stomach. The same script, the same lies, different victim. What if I told you Owen's been lying? That there's no budget constraint? That he's been reporting phantom employees and pocketing their salaries while making you do their work? Garrett's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. That's insane. You're saying Owen's been stealing? Daniel pulled out the printout Sophia had given him, showed Garrett the phantom employees, the bank accounts, the payroll fraud spanning 14 months. Holy hell. Garrett set his cup down with shaking hands. I thought I was going crazy. Thought I just wasn't good enough, wasn't fast enough. My wife keeps asking why I'm never home, and I don't have a good answer except that I'm always behind, and if I don't catch up, I'll get fired. You're not behind. You're doing the work of multiple people, just like I was. Daniel leaned forward, keeping his voice low, even though the coffee shop was mostly empty. The CEO found out 5 days ago. She came to my house 2 nights ago to tell me. But I need to know how many others there are. Owen supervised 9 people, according to Sophia. I need to find them. Garrett's eyes widened. Sophia Bennett came to your house? The glacier herself? She's not what people think. The words came out defensive, surprising Daniel with their vehemence. He barely knew Sophia, had spent 1 conversation with her. But something about the way she'd stood in his kitchen, vulnerable and honest, and taking responsibility for failures that weren't entirely her fault, made him want to defend her. Garrett was looking at him strangely, but he didn't comment on Daniel's tone. I know 3 other guys in operations. We grab beers sometimes, complain about the hours. If this is real, if Owen's been doing this to all of us, can you get them together? Somewhere off company property? My buddy Dex owns a garage in Georgetown, Sullivan's Auto. We could meet there tonight. Daniel nodded, feeling pieces of a plan starting to form. Sophia had evidence, had started the investigation, but she was working from the top down through official channels and legal processes. Daniel could work from the bottom up, could find the other victims, could give them the truth they deserved. Tonight, 7 p.m. Tell them it's important, but don't give details over company email. Garrett stood, shaking Daniel's hand with the kind of grip that came from genuine gratitude. I don't know what you're doing, but thank you for not staying quiet. For giving a damn. Sullivan's Auto occupied a corner lot in Georgetown, the kind of place that looked like it had been there since the 50s and would probably outlast the gentrification creeping through Seattle's industrial neighborhoods. The bay doors were closed when Daniel arrived, but he could see light spilling from underneath and hear the sound of voices inside. Dexter Sullivan answered his knock, a man in his mid-40s with grease-stained hands and the kind of face that had seen hard years but hadn't lost its capacity for warmth. Former Navy mechanic like Daniel. They'd served at different times, different ships, but there was a kinship and shared experience. Dex had opened this garage after his discharge, built it into something solid through sheer determination and skill. "Carter, Garrett said you needed the space for something important." Daniel stepped inside, seeing Garrett and 3 other men standing around a workbench that had been cleared of tools. All of them wore the same expression: exhaustion mixed with curiosity, mixed with the kind of hope people develop when they're drowning and someone throws them a rope. "Everyone here works under Owen Harris?" Nods all around. Daniel took a breath and started talking. Told them about Sophia's visit, about the phantom employees, about 14 months of systematic fraud, about falsified performance reviews and stolen wages, and a system designed to exploit them while making them believe they were the problem. By the time he finished, the garage was silent except for the hum of the space heater in the corner. A man Daniel didn't know spoke first, his voice rough with anger. "You're telling me I missed my kid's 5th birthday party because I was covering an emergency call that Owen created? Because some fake employee needed to justify overtime that was going into Owen's pocket?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Daniel met each man's eyes in turn. "Sophia's handling this through legal channels. She's building a case. But we can help. We can document our own experiences, pull records that show the reality of what we've been going through. Give her ammunition she can use to make sure this never happens again." Garrett spoke up from his position, leaning against a toolbox. "That sounds a lot like we'd be accessing company systems, going through data we might not technically have clearance for. We'd be using our own credentials to check our own time records, our own work orders, our own performance data. Nothing illegal about an employee verifying their own information." Dex laughed, the sound echoing in the garage. "That's some creative interpretation of policy, Carter. You got a better idea?" Silence answered him. Then, one by one, the men started nodding. "I'm in. I can pull system logs, time clock data, work order modifications. Anything digital leaves a trail, and I know where to look. I can get the physical paperwork, maintenance requests, equipment requisitions, all the stuff Owen signed off on that never quite added up." Daniel felt something shift in the room. Felt these men who'd been isolated in their suffering, each thinking they were the only ones struggling, suddenly becoming a team, a force, something that could push back against the system that had been crushing them. "We do this carefully. We document everything. We back up files. We give Sophia Bennett the evidence she needs to burn Owen's whole operation to the ground. But then what? Say we expose Owen. Say we prove the fraud. What's to stop the next manager from pulling the same scam? What's to stop this from happening again in a different department?" The question hit at the heart of something Daniel had been thinking about since Sophia left his apartment. Exposing Owen was important. Getting justice for the 9 victims was critical. But if the system allowed this to happen in the first place, if there were no safeguards, no oversight, no way for employees to report abuse without fear of retaliation, then they were just putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Then we help Sophia fix the system. We tell her what needs to change from the ground level, not just policies on paper, but real mechanisms that protect people. The men exchanged glances. Daniel could see the skepticism, the doubt, the lifetime of experience that taught them CEOs didn't actually care about workers on the bottom rung. She came to my house at 11 at night. She could have sent an email, could have had HR handle everything, but she showed up in person because she wanted me to know she wasn't hiding behind her title. that she was willing to face what her company had done. Maybe she's just good at PR. Maybe. Or maybe we're so used to being screwed over that we can't recognize someone trying to help when they show up. That shut down the objections. The men got to work, each taking responsibility for different pieces of the puzzle. Garrett set up his laptop and started diving into server logs. Others made lists of suspicious work orders, phantom emergencies, equipment purchases that never arrived. Daniel watched them work and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The sense that what he was doing mattered, that he was part of something bigger than just surviving one shift at a time. His phone buzzed. A text from Beth. Lily keeps asking when you're coming to get her. I told her tomorrow morning, but she's worried about you. Says you sounded sad on the phone. Daniel typed back quickly. Tell her I'm okay. Tell her Daddy's fighting to make things better. 3 hours later, they had everything. Time clock manipulations showing systematic deletion of overtime hours across all 9 employees. Work orders that had been modified after completion to make productivity look lower. Equipment requisition forms for tools that were never delivered but were charged to the budget anyway. Emergency maintenance calls created out of thin air to justify Owen's own overtime while his crew handled the fake crisis. Garrett transferred everything to 3 separate USB drives, encrypted, backed up, impossible to deny. This is enough to bury him. Question is, what do we do with it? Daniel took the drive, feeling the weight of it in his palm. Such a small thing, but it held the evidence of 14 months of systematic theft and exploitation. 14 months of lies finally exposed in irrefutable data. I give it to Sophia. Let her use it however she needs to make the case. You trust her that much? Daniel thought about the woman in his kitchen, the tears in her eyes, the way her voice had broken when she talked about the employees she'd failed, the way she'd washed his dishes like she was trying to physically clean away the guilt. Yeah, I think I do. Daniel pulled out his phone, texted Sophia for the first time, initiating contact instead of waiting. We have additional evidence. 9 employees total, not just me. Can we meet tomorrow? The response came within 30 seconds. She was awake at 10:30 at night. Yes, my office, 8 a.m. Bring everything you have, and Daniel, thank you. Each man took a task. Document personal experiences in writing. Pull individual performance reviews, real versus falsified. Collect emails from Owen pressuring them. Screenshot text messages about emergency calls. They agreed to reconvene if needed, exchanged personal phone numbers instead of using company emails. As the men prepared to leave, reality hit. They were going against their boss, could face retaliation even if they were legally protected. Jobs could be at risk if this went wrong. Daniel addressed the fear directly. I know what you're risking. I know this is scary. But think about your families. Think about the time you've lost. Think about every time you thought you weren't good enough. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting so this doesn't happen to anyone else. Dex's voice carried the weight of age and experience. Carter's right. We do this together, or we stay broken separately. I'm not letting Owen Harris steal another damn hour from any of us. Heads nodded. Commitment solidified. Daniel drove home, exhausted but energized. The USB drive in his pocket felt like a grenade and salvation simultaneously. His mind was already planning tomorrow's meeting with Sophia. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily via Beth's phone. Daddy, when are you coming home? I made you a drawing of you being a superhero. Love you. A photo was attached, a crayon drawing of Daniel with a cape. Best Daddy written across the top in uneven letters. Daniel's eyes blurred. He saved the image, texted back. Love you too, sweetheart. See you tomorrow morning. And yes, Daddy's trying to be a superhero. He pulled into his apartment parking lot and looked up at his modest building, thought about Lily's drawing, Sophia's tears, the 8 men who'd trusted him tonight. Tomorrow he would walk into Meridian Technologies headquarters not as an exploited technician, but as someone fighting back. Not alone anymore. For the first time in 14 months, Daniel Carter allowed himself to believe he might actually win. Monday morning, 8 a.m. Daniel walked into Meridian Technologies with the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. The energy felt different, purpose instead of dread propelling each step. He didn't stop at his locker in the basement maintenance area. Didn't check in with the shift supervisor who'd been tracking his hours for Owen. Walked straight to the elevator bank and pressed 32. The executive floor. A place he'd never been. The doors opened onto a different world. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, Seattle's skyline sharp against the morning light. Sophia's corner office dominated the northeast corner, glass walls revealing her standing behind a massive desk, already in a tailored navy suit despite the early hour. She saw him immediately, stood, waved him in. Patricia Crane was already there, lead attorney, 50s, former prosecutor with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd won more cases than she'd lost. 2 associates flanked her, laptops open, legal pads covered in notes. Mr. Carter. Patricia's handshake was firm, assessing. Daniel connected his laptop to the conference screen without preamble, walked them through everything Garrett's team had collected. Time clock data showing systematic deletions across 9 employees. Work orders modified post-completion to suppress productivity metrics. Equipment fraud documentation. Emergency call logs that didn't match actual building maintenance records. He showed them the 9 employee profiles, all suffering identical patterns. Patricia asked sharp questions, cross-referencing against Sophia's investigation. The associates typed furiously, building timelines, connecting dots. By the time Daniel finished, they had a comprehensive case spanning 9 employees, 14 months, $421,000 in total theft. Sophia had remained professional throughout the presentation, arms crossed, expression neutral. But when Daniel displayed the personal statements, missed birthdays, anniversaries, children's milestones, her composure fractured. Just for a moment, but Daniel saw it. The CEO vanished, replaced by someone genuinely horrified. This is worse than I thought. Owen didn't just steal money. He stole lives. Patricia's voice cut through the emotion with legal precision. We have enough for criminal charges, fraud, embezzlement, falsifying corporate records, plus civil claims, wage theft, emotional distress, hostile work environment. I recommend we file with Seattle PD today, suspend Owen without pay, settle with affected employees confidentially. NDAs, structured payments. Handle this quietly to minimize corporate liability. Sophia moved to the window, silent for a long beat. When she spoke, her voice carried an edge that made even Patricia pause. No NDAs. These employees deserve to tell their stories if they choose. That increases our legal exposure significantly. If they go public, if we silence them, we prove we care more about protecting ourselves than doing what's right. Daniel stepped forward, surprised by his own certainty. She's right. Silence is what let this happen in the first place. If you make us sign NDAs, you're just covering up the cover-up. Patricia looked between them, reading something in the dynamic that made her mouth tighten. You're both going to cost this company millions. Then we spend millions, but we do it honestly. Wednesday morning arrived with the force of a Category 5 hurricane. Daniel's phone had exploded overnight. 53 texts, 27 missed calls. Beth's name topped the call list. News vans filled the parking lot, protesters gathering behind hastily erected barriers. Security personnel Daniel had never seen before directed traffic with grim efficiency. He called Beth back immediately. "Turn on the news, now." Daniel pulled up Como 4 on his phone. His stomach dropped through the floor. The reporter stood outside Meridian Technologies' main entrance, protesters already gathering behind her with signs demanding justice and accountability. The ticker running across the bottom made his blood run cold. Breaking. Meridian Technologies accused of systematic employee exploitation. Internal documents leaked. The reporter's voice cut through the buzz in Daniel's ears. Sources have provided KOMO 4 with internal audit reports showing that Operations Director Owen Harris allegedly created phantom employees, embezzled nearly $421,000, and falsified performance reviews to cover his tracks. The question now facing CEO Sophia Bennett: what did she know, and when did she know it? Daniel scrolled through messages, reporters requesting interviews, co-workers asking if the news was true, anonymous numbers offering money for his story. The carefully controlled investigation Sophia had been running through legal channels had just detonated in the public sphere. His phone rang. Sophia. "Don't talk to anyone. Don't comment. Don't confirm or deny. I'm sending a car to pick you up. We're going into crisis mode. Someone on the inside leaked this to make me look complicit." The town car arrived within 15 minutes, tinted windows that felt both ridiculous and necessary. Daniel climbed into the back seat, feeling like a criminal being transported to trial. The lobby looked like a war zone. Security had cordoned off the main entrance, where protesters shouted about corporate greed and worker exploitation. Satellite dishes pointed at the building like artillery. Daniel slipped in through the loading dock, guided by security to a service elevator that bypassed the chaos. The executive conference room held Sophia, the 3 lawyers, and Sheila Park, PR director, 40s, with the manic energy of someone running on espresso and impending disaster. Laptops displayed real-time news coverage, social media sentiment analysis. A stock ticker in the corner showed Meridian down 8% and falling. Patricia pulled up analysis on the main screen. The leaked materials match our internal audit reports almost exactly. Whoever provided them had access to materials restricted to this room and the investigation team. We have a mole. Someone who thinks transparency is more important than corporate liability. Or someone who wants to make you look bad. Sophia's face hardened, all traces of the vulnerable woman from Daniel's kitchen erased. Whoever it is doesn't matter right now. What matters is how we respond. Sheila jumped in with practiced urgency. We need to get ahead of this. Issue a statement. Control the narrative before it controls us. She pulled up a draft full of corporate speak about alleged improprieties and ongoing investigations. Patricia nodded approval. Legally protective, admitted nothing. Daniel's objection came out sharper than intended. That statement is bullshit. You're not actually saying anything. Sheila's response was razor-edged. That's the point. Admitting fault creates liability. Hiding behind lawyers makes you look guilty, like you're just proving every protester outside is right, that corporations only care about covering their asses. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Patricia opened her mouth to object, but Sophia raised one hand. Instant silence. We're doing a press conference, today, 2 p.m. I'll make a statement, take questions, own what happened. Patricia's carefully controlled demeanor cracked. Ms. Bennett, any statement confirming allegations increases legal exposure exponentially. I don't care. Sheila tried a different angle. We could position this as new leadership cleaning house. Make you the hero who discovered the problem. Turn the narrative to your favor. Sophia's voice went cold enough to frost glass. No spin. No clever framing. We tell the truth. We failed our employees. We're making it right. No positioning, no hero narrative, just honesty. Daniel watched Patricia pull up polling data, focus group research, scenario modeling. None of it mattered. He'd seen this same expression on Sophia's face in his kitchen the moment she'd decided to stop protecting herself and start doing what was right. Consequences be damned. The truth might not be enough. Shareholders are already calling for your resignation. Stock dropped 8% in the first hour. If we admit fault without a strong counter-narrative, you could lose your position. Then I lose my position. I'd rather lose the company than lose myself protecting it. Daniel stood before he could second-guess the impulse. All eyes turned to him. He felt like an imposter again, but pushed through. Sophia's right. Hiding makes it worse. Covering up proves we haven't learned anything. We admit we failed. We show what we're doing to fix it. We prove companies can change if they're willing to face hard truths. Sheila looked at him like he'd just suggested setting money on fire. That's very idealistic, Mr. Carter. But we're dealing with real-world consequences, legal liability, stock prices, shareholder lawsuits. And 9 employees who spent 14 months being exploited while everyone looked the other way. They deserve better than corporate spin. The next hours blurred into a frenzy of statement crafting, question anticipation, legal review. Sheila proved better at her job than Daniel had given her credit for. She wasn't trying to hide truth, just present it without inviting unnecessary lawsuits. There was an art to it he grudgingly appreciated. The press room was packed. Every major Seattle outlet, national stringers, tech industry reporters who'd covered Meridian for years. Daniel stood backstage, watching the crowd through a gap in the curtains, heart hammering hard enough to hurt. Sophia appeared beside him, close enough that he caught her perfume, something subtle he'd started associating with safety. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Those 9 people need to see someone standing up, that we're not hiding. You're braver than you give yourself credit for. What if this destroys everything you built? Then I build something else, something better, something I'm not ashamed of. They called Sophia's name. She straightened her jacket, squared her shoulders, walked onto that stage with her head high. Daniel followed 2 steps behind, feeling like he was walking into battle without armor. Camera flashes exploded like artillery fire. Microphones bristled from the press section like weapons aimed at center mass. Sophia stepped to the podium, and the room went silent. Her voice came out steady, clear, carrying to every corner. 5 weeks ago, I discovered something that fundamentally shook my understanding of the company I built. Meridian Technologies, my company, had been systematically exploiting employees, not through policy, not through intention, but through negligence, through my failure to see what was happening right under my nose. She laid out the facts with surgical precision. Owen's fraud scheme, 9 phantom employees over 14 months, $421,000 stolen, falsified performance reviews, real employees working 65-hour weeks while being told they were barely adequate. I take full responsibility for creating an environment where this could happen. I was so focused on growth, on quarterly earnings, on shareholder value, that I stopped seeing the human cost of my blind spots. She announced comprehensive changes: independent oversight board to review all manager conduct, anonymous reporting system with third-party investigation, quarterly performance audits by external firms, $1.2 million in back pay and damages to 9 affected employees. No ND as employees free to tell their stories. A reporter's hand shot up the moment Sophia paused. Ms. Bennett, should we expect criminal charges to be filed against you for enabling this fraud? Her response came without hesitation. I welcome any investigation. Full transparency and accountability. If prosecutors determine I bear legal responsibility, I'll face those consequences. Another reporter, sensing blood. Who's the man standing beside you? Every eye in the room turned to Daniel. His throat went dry, every prepared answer Sheila had drilled into him evaporating like morning fog. This is Daniel Carter, one of the affected employees. He's been instrumental in developing our reform initiatives and ensuring we actually address root causes. The same reporter focused on Daniel like a predator spotting weakness. Mr. Carter, how do you feel working for the company that exploited you? Daniel stepped to his own microphone, spoke from the gut, bypassing every coached response. Angry, betrayed, but also hopeful. What happened to me was wrong. What Sophia is doing about it is right. I'm staying because I believe companies can change if they're willing to face hard truths, and because the best way to honor my coworkers who suffered is to make sure it never happens again. Aren't you afraid of retaliation? The question hung there, genuine concern wrapped in journalistic skepticism. Daniel thought about Lily watching, about the example he was setting, about courage meaning doing the right thing when it costs something. Every day. But my daughter is watching. I want her to see that standing up for what's right matters even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He saw reporters writing that down verbatim, saw others nodding slightly, saw Sophia's hand grip the podium a little tighter, as if his answer had affected her more than she'd anticipated. More questions came in rapid succession: timeline, accountability, shareholder response. Sophia fielded them with practiced skill, never defensive, never making excuses, just owning failures and articulating the path forward. 40 minutes later, it ended. General consensus seemed split. Half the room looked sympathetic, the other half looked like sharks scenting blood in the water. Backstage, Sophia collapsed into a chair like her strings had been cut. I might have just destroyed my company. Daniel sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Or saved it. Stock's going to tank tomorrow. Probably, but you did the right thing. The right thing might cost me everything. Daniel thought about Lily's questions about whether Sophia would be her new mom, about coffee shop drawings and butterfly wishes, and all the fragile hope he'd been building on foundations that felt increasingly unstable. Then we'll figure it out together. Sophia looked at him, and something passed between them that felt bigger than partnership, bigger than professional respect, something neither was ready to name but couldn't deny anymore. Together. Her phone rang. Thomas Whitmore, board chairman. Sophia's expression went carefully neutral, but Daniel saw fear flash across her features before the corporate mask slammed into place. She walked away to take the call, and Daniel sat alone in an empty backstage room, wondering if he'd just watched a woman commit career suicide in the name of honesty. 2 days after the press conference, Daniel walked into Meridian Technologies to find the lobby transformed into a fortress under siege. Security had tripled. Metal barriers formed corridors directing employees away from the main entrance, where protesters still gathered, their signs now professionally printed instead of hastily scrawled. The media presence had grown rather than diminished, cameras tracking every person entering or leaving, like the building itself was on trial. Stock had opened down 8% that first morning, recovered slightly to down 5% by close. Better than expected, the market recognized that transparency hadn't destroyed the company, but damage was done. Shareholder calls demanding answers, media continuing to press for more. His phone buzzed before he reached the elevator. Sophia's assistant, with a message that made his stomach drop. Emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. Ms. Bennett requests your presence. Daniel had never attended a board meeting, didn't know the protocols or politics, or how to behave in rooms where decisions worth millions got made by people whose net worth exceeded entire towns. He rode the elevator to the executive floor, feeling like he was ascending to his own execution. The anteroom outside the boardroom held Sophia and her legal team in urgent conversation. Patricia looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 days. Sheila was conspicuously absent, probably drafting press releases for multiple scenarios, including Sophia's termination. Sophia broke away from the lawyers, pulled Daniel aside. Her voice dropped low, urgent. Thomas Whitmore is calling for a vote of no confidence. He's been working the other board members since the press conference, building support to remove me as CEO. Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. Can he do that? It's his job. He represents shareholder interests, and right now, shareholders are hemorrhaging money because I chose transparency over profit protection. Fear flickered in her eyes before she buried it under layers of professional composure. What if this destroys everything you built? Then I build something else. But her voice wavered on the last word, betraying the lie. This wasn't just about losing a position. Meridian was Sophia's identity, her purpose, the thing she'd sacrificed everything else to create. Without it, she'd be untethered, lost. The boardroom was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle's skyline, a conference table that could seat 20, leather chairs that probably cost more than Daniel's truck. 6 board members already seated, their expressions ranging from sympathetic to hostile, with nothing in between. Thomas Whitmore commanded the head of the table, 68, chairman for 6 years, with a kind of face that had made hard decisions for decades without losing sleep. Gray suit that screamed money. Rolex that screamed more money. He looked at Sophia with something between pity and contempt. Ms. Bennett, Mr. Carter, the board is ready. Daniel followed Sophia in, feeling every eye assess and dismiss him in the same glance. Whitmore didn't waste time on pleasantries. This emergency session addresses the fallout from Ms. Bennett's press conference. In the 48 hours since she publicly admitted to systemic failures, we've lost over $300 million in market capitalization at the low point, recovered somewhat, but still down significantly. Shareholders are threatening lawsuits. Our largest clients are requesting meetings to discuss whether Meridian can be trusted. And our reputation, built over 8 years, has been damaged possibly beyond repair. He turned to Sophia with the expression of a disappointed father confronting a wayward child. Ms. Bennett, what were you thinking? Sophia stood, refusing to remain seated while being attacked. I was thinking we owed our employees the truth, that hiding behind lawyers and PR spin would make us complicit in covering up systematic abuse. Everything costs money. The question is whether the cost is justified. You chose moral grandstanding over fiduciary responsibility. A woman Daniel didn't recognize, 50s, expensive suit, leaned forward. Ms. Bennett, we understand the moral impulse, but you have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. Your actions directly harmed their interests. My actions exposed crimes committed under my watch. Should I have hidden that to protect stock prices? Whitmore's palms slammed the table, the sound cracking through the room like a gunshot. You should have handled it quietly. Settled with affected employees under NDAs. Fired Owen without fanfare. implemented reforms without admitting culpability. That's how adults manage corporate crisis. The room erupted. Board members choosing sides, lawyers trying to restore order. Daniel sat frozen, watching Sophia's life's work get torn apart by people who measured success in quarterly earnings instead of human cost. Whitmore raised his hand. Instant silence. The man knew how to command a room. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in CEO Sophia Bennett. Given the catastrophic damage her decisions have caused, I move that she be removed from her position effective immediately. Sophia's face went pale, but her spine stayed straight. I'd like the opportunity to present my case before any vote. You've presented enough already, to the entire world. The sarcasm in Sophia's voice was subtle but cutting. Then let me present to the people who actually matter. The board that's supposed to govern this company with more wisdom than I apparently possess. Whitmore considered, then gestured magnanimously. You have 15 minutes. Make them count. Sophia pulled up slides on the main screen, data sheet compiled over 2 weeks working late into the night while the world outside screamed for her resignation. Her voice shifted to the tone that had probably sold investors on Meridian 13 years ago. Confident, visionary, unshakable. When I founded Meridian, I was 22 with $30,000 and a belief that I could build a company where people mattered, where innovation came from treating employees like assets instead of expenses. For the first 5 years, we lived those values. Then we scaled, brought on investors who cared about growth rates, hired executives who optimized for efficiency, and somewhere in that process, I stopped walking the floors, stopped knowing my employees' names, stopped seeing the human beings making my success possible. She advanced to the next slide, showing audit findings in stark numerical detail. 6 weeks ago, I discovered we'd become exactly what I swore we'd never be. A company that exploited workers while leadership looked the other way. I had a choice: handle it quietly or face it publicly and prove we could change. Whitmore interrupted. And look where that's gotten us. Sophia ignored him, advancing slides showing data Daniel had helped compile. I chose transparency. Yes, we've lost market value. Yes, we're facing lawsuits. But look at these numbers. Employee retention up 23% since announcing reforms. Applications for open positions increased 340%. Our Glassdoor rating went from 3.2 to 4.7 in 2 weeks. We're being contacted by top talent who previously wouldn't consider Meridian. Next slide. Customer data. Our clients aren't fleeing, they're leaning in. Customer satisfaction metrics, contract renewals, new business inquiries, all trending positive. Because in an industry full of companies that hide their failures, we became the one willing to own ours and fix them. That's not weakness. That's competitive advantage. She looked directly at Whitmore. The stock will recover. Lawsuits will settle. What won't recover is our integrity if we prove that honesty gets punished, that executives who do the right thing get fired, while those who protect the bottom line get rewarded. You want to remove me? Fine. But first, ask yourself what message that sends to our employees, to our customers, to every other CEO watching to see if courage gets rewarded or destroyed. Whitmore leaned back, steepling his fingers. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone used to winning every battle. Inspiring speech. But speeches don't pay dividends. What about the operational chaos you've created? The whispers that you're romantically involved with an employee you promoted? The appearance of favoritism and conflicts of interest? Every eye turned to Daniel. Heat crawled up his neck, but he met Whitmore's gaze without flinching. This was the real attack, trying to discredit Sophia through him. Sophia's voice went ice cold. Mr. Carter is here because of his expertise, not because of any personal relationship. He knows this company better than anyone in this room. He's lived the problems we're trying to fix. His insights shaped every reform we're implementing. and the rumors are completely irrelevant to his professional qualifications. Whitmore smiled like he'd just won a point. Everything is relevant when it creates the appearance of impropriety. Your judgment is compromised, Ms. Bennett. You've let emotions override business sense. That's exactly why this board needs to act. A woman Daniel hadn't noticed earlier stood. 54, steel gray hair, the bearing of someone used to being the smartest person in any room. Catherine Brennan, former HR executive at Microsoft, reputation for integrity that had cost her advancement in the ruthless tech sector. Mr. Whitmore, I've been on this board 6 years. I've watched us prioritize profit over people repeatedly. I stayed silent because that's how corporate boards operate. Sophia Bennett just made me ashamed of that silence. Whitmore's face suggested this was betrayal. Catherine, we've discussed this. You've discussed it. I've listened. Now I'm speaking. Catherine's voice carried quiet authority that silenced even Whitmore. Ms. Bennett did something unprecedented. She chose values over value. She proved that admitting failure doesn't destroy companies, it builds trust. And you want to fire her for that? She looked around the table at each board member. If we vote Sophia out, we prove everything the protesters outside are saying, that corporations exist only to extract value, not create it, that we're exactly as soulless as people fear. I move that we retain Sophia Bennett as CEO. Give her 6 months to prove her reforms can work. If financials don't recover in that time, we revisit. But we don't punish courage with termination. The motion hung in the air like a challenge. Whitmore looked genuinely surprised that someone had outmaneuvered him. That's not the motion on the table. Then I'm putting it there. We vote on my motion first. Retain Bennett with 6-month performance review. All in favor? Hands rose slowly. Catherine plus 2 others. 3 in favor. Whitmore plus 2 others raised hands in opposition. 3 opposed. Everyone turned to one board member who hadn't voted. David Chen, 42, youngest member, silent through the entire meeting. He looked at Sophia for a long moment, then at Daniel, then back to Sophia. I came to this board because Meridian represented something different. A company that actually cared about culture, about people. We've lost that somehow. Maybe Miss Bennett can help us find it again. His hand went up. 4-3. Sophia kept her position. Whitmore's face went red, but he nodded curtly. Motion passes. Ms. Bennett remains CEO subject to 6-month review. This meeting is adjourned. Board members filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact with either Sophia or Whitmore. Catherine paused beside Sophia's chair. Don't waste this chance. Prove we were right to trust you. She turned to Daniel. Mr. Carter, walk with me. Catherine led him to a quiet corner away from the conference room. I've been watching you. How you stood by Sophia during the press conference. How you've handled the transition from technician to advisor. How you organized those employees to document fraud. You're wasted here. Daniel started to object, but Catherine raised a hand. Not because you're not good at what you do, but because as long as you work for Meridian, people will question whether your success is merit or favoritism. Whether your relationship with Sophia compromises both of you. You deserve better than that. So does she. She pulled a business card from her pocket. I run a mid-sized tech company, climate control systems for industrial facilities. We need a director of operations, someone who understands what it's like on the ground, someone with your integrity and drive. 95,000 plus equity. Completely separate from Meridian. No conflicts, no whispers. Daniel took the card, mind racing. This was an escape hatch and a betrayal simultaneously. Think about it. If you're interested, call me. We can start you in 2 weeks. She walked away, leaving Daniel holding a card that felt like a lifeline and an abandonment wrapped in one small piece of paper. When the room emptied, Sophia collapsed into her chair like someone had cut her strings. Daniel moved to her side, hand finding her shoulder. You did it. You kept your company. By the thinnest possible margin. 1 vote. But David didn't go the other way. You won. Sophia looked up at him, and the corporate armor fell away completely. Just a woman who'd been fighting for days without rest, finally given permission to stop. I couldn't have done this without you. When Whitmore attacked, when he tried to make you the problem, you just sat there and took it. You trusted me to handle it. Daniel pulled her to her feet. They stood close enough he could count heartbeats in the pulse at her throat. I trust you completely. The words carried more weight than intended, more honesty than was probably safe. Watching her fight for her company, for the reforms, for him by extension, had cracked something open in Daniel's chest he couldn't seal back up. Sophia's hand came up to rest against his chest, right over his heart. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Her phone rang. Catherine's name on the screen. The moment shattered like glass. Sophia stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself like armor sliding into place. She answered while Daniel tried to get his breathing under control. He couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but watched Sophia's expression shift from gratitude to surprise to something complicated he couldn't name. Yes, I understand. Thank you. I'll be in touch. She hung up, looked at Daniel with an expression mixing hope and fear in equal measure. Catherine offered you director of operations at her company. Same salary I'm offering plus equity. Completely separate from Meridian, so there's no conflict of interest concerns. Daniel pulled out the business card. She already told me. Sophia moved to the windows, putting distance between them that felt both necessary and painful. You should take it. Is that what you want? For me to leave? I want you to have options. To not feel trapped by circumstances or obligations. To choose what's best for you and Lily without considering how it affects me or the company. Daniel joined her at the window, both staring at the city rather than looking at each other. And if what's best for us includes you? Sophia's reflection in the glass showed something raw and vulnerable. Then we do it right. We wait. We establish clear boundaries. We let the reforms solidify and the company stabilize. You build your career somewhere no one can question your qualifications. And when enough time has passed that no one can accuse us of impropriety, we revisit what this is. Daniel turned to face her directly, forcing her to meet his eyes. How long? 6 months? A year? However long it takes to do this properly. The rationality of it made Daniel want to argue, even though she was completely right. They weren't two people who could just date casually and see what happened. Lily was already attached. The company was already scrutinizing them. One wrong move would destroy everything they were building. What if you meet someone else in that time? Sophia's laugh came out broken. Daniel, I haven't met anyone who made me feel anything in 8 years. I'm not worried about finding someone else. I'm worried about losing you before we even start. You won't lose me. I'll take Catherine's offer, build my career somewhere I can't be accused of riding your coattails. And we'll wait. However long it takes to do this right. That's very mature and reasonable. I hate every word of it. Me too. Daniel left Sophia's office before he could change his mind, rode the elevator down to where protesters still chanted and cameras still rolled, walked to his truck and sat without starting the engine. His phone buzzed. Text from Lily via Beth's phone. Daddy, when are you coming home? I made you a drawing of you and Miss Sophia. You both have butterfly wings because you're brave. Daniel stared at the message until his vision blurred. His daughter believed in magic and second chances and grown-ups who kept their promises. He couldn't be reckless with her faith, couldn't risk her getting hurt because he couldn't wait a few months to do things properly. He called Catherine Brennan directly. "Mr. Carter, I assume Sophia told you about my offer?" "She did. I'm accepting. When do you want me to start?" 2 weeks. That'll give you time to transition your responsibilities and get Lily settled with the new schedule. "I'll be there." Daniel hung up and sat in his truck watching rain start to fall on Seattle streets. 2 weeks until he walked away from Meridian Technologies. 2 weeks until he put real distance between himself and Sophia. 2 weeks to prove he could do the right thing, even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. 3 months at Tech Climate Solutions had transformed Daniel in ways he hadn't anticipated. Director of Operations with a real team reporting to him. 8 people who actually existed, whose work he didn't have to cover himself. Reasonable 45-hour weeks that let him pick Lily up from school most days. Salary that meant choosing between groceries and rent was a memory instead of a monthly calculation. Catherine proved demanding but fair, pushing him to grow without the chaos that had defined his early weeks at Meridian. She mentored him in leadership skills he'd never learned in the Navy, never needed as a technician. No hidden agendas, no phantom employees, just honest work, building something real. Meridian stock had recovered, climbing 12% above pre-scandal levels. The market had recognized what Sophia understood from the beginning. Transparency built trust, and trust translated to value. Owen Harris awaited trial on multiple fraud charges, his lawyer already negotiating a plea deal that would put him away for years. The 9 affected employees had received their settlements, several joining Daniel in leadership roles at other companies, spreading the lessons learned like seeds finding fertile ground. Sophia texted daily, professional messages about reform implementation, best practices, quarterly results. But underneath the corporate language, Daniel heard what she wasn't saying. "I miss you. This is hard. I'm counting the days." He texted back with the same careful distance, never crossing lines, never admitting that he saved every message she sent, read them late at night when Lily was asleep and the apartment felt too quiet. Lily asked constantly, "When can we see Miss Sophia again? You said we'd see her when things got less crazy. It's been forever, Daddy." 3 months felt like forever to a 9-year-old. Felt like forever to Daniel, too. Saturday afternoon in November, Seattle's autumn rain pounding against windows with the relentless rhythm that defined Pacific Northwest winters. Daniel made a decision before he could second-guess himself. Picked up his phone, typed the message, hit send before courage failed. "I know we said we'd wait, but Lily keeps asking about you. Would you want to come to dinner at our place? Nothing romantic, just, we miss you." The pause lasted long enough Daniel thought she'd refuse. Then 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I'd love to." "When?" "Tonight. Lily's making pasta. Well, helping me make pasta. It'll probably be a disaster. Disasters are my specialty lately." "What time?" 6. I'll be there." Lily spent the afternoon practicing what she'd say to Sophia, rehearsing introductions in the bathroom mirror with the gravity of someone preparing for a presidential debate. Daniel listened from the hallway, wondering what he was doing, bringing his daughter into the complicated mess of professional and increasingly unprofessional feelings about his former boss. "Can I wear my butterfly dress? The purple one Mommy got me." The casual mention of Jessica hit like it always did, sharp ache that had dulled over 4 years but never quite disappeared. Lily talked about her mother in present tense sometimes, as if Jessica was just away on a business trip, instead of buried in a cemetery 20 minutes from their apartment. "You can wear whatever you want, sweetheart." Sophia arrived at exactly 6 with sunflowers for Lily, wine for Daniel, and a smile that made his chest ache. She wore jeans, soft and worn, not the pressed perfection of boardrooms, and a cream-colored sweater that made her look approachable instead of untouchable. Her hair fell loose past her shoulders in waves he'd never seen because she always wore it pinned tight at work. Lily spotted her first, waved with both hands like flagging down a rescue plane. "You're really pretty. Daddy said you were nice, but he didn't say pretty." Daniel wanted the earth to swallow him whole. Sophia's laugh came out genuine and warm, nothing like the controlled professional sound from meetings. "Thank you, Lily. You're pretty too. I love your dress. Are those butterflies?" "Magic butterflies! They're different from regular butterflies because they grant wishes, but only if you're really, really nice." Sophia sat down across from them, and the corporate armor fell away completely, replaced by genuine curiosity as Lily launched into an explanation of complicated mythology she'd apparently been developing for months. The magic ones lived in the rainbow forest and only came out when kids were being brave. "Did your mommy tell you about them?" A shadow crossed Sophia's face, quick enough Daniel almost missed it. "My mom wasn't really the storytelling type." Lily's face got serious, with the gravity only children could bring to profound injustices. "That's sad. Stories are important. Daddy tells me stories every night. Well, he used to before he got so tired." The observation landed like an accusation, even though Lily's tone held no judgment. Just a 9-year-old stating facts she'd learned to accept. Daniel felt Sophia's eyes on him, but couldn't meet her gaze. "Your dad's been working very hard, but that's going to change now. He won't be so tired anymore." Lily's response carried the casual cynicism of someone who'd heard too many broken promises. "That's what he says, but grown-ups say lots of things." Sophia reached across the table, took Lily's hand with gentleness that surprised Daniel. "I promise we're going to make things better for your dad. And for lots of other people, too." Lily studied Sophia's face, searching for lies with the intensity of a prosecutor cross-examining a hostile witness, then nodded. "Okay. I believe you. You have kind eyes." The evening unfolded in napkin drawings and overcooked pasta. Lily showed Sophia how to shade butterfly wings with the side of a pencil. Sophia taught Lily a technique for drawing perfect circles she'd learned in an art class years ago. Daniel watched them together and felt something dangerous blooming in his chest. The shape of family, the outline of belonging, the possibility of a future he'd stopped letting himself imagine after Jessica died. Lily skipped off to the bathroom with explicit instructions not to talk to strangers. The moment she was out of earshot, Sophia's composure crumbled slightly. "She's incredible. You're raising an amazing kid. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping us afloat. That's parenting, or so I imagine. I wouldn't know." The loneliness in Sophia's voice made Daniel look at her fully, really see her. A woman who'd sacrificed everything for a company that was supposed to mean something, who'd woken up one day and realized she'd built a prison of her own making, who was sitting in his modest apartment drawing butterflies with a 9-year-old and looking more alive than he'd ever seen her. "Lily asked me something this morning." Sophia's attention sharpened with the focus that had probably terrified board members and competitors. "She asked if you were going to be her new mom." The words hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Sophia's hands went still on the napkin she'd been doodling on. "What did you tell her?" "I told her families come in lots of different shapes. that sometimes people who aren't related by blood can still care about each other. That's diplomatic. Daniel leaned forward, keeping his voice low, even though the apartment was loud enough with Lily's music playing to drown them out. She's already attached to you after one dinner 3 months ago. And I need you to know that if this, whatever this is between us, if it goes wrong, it won't just hurt me. It'll hurt her. And I won't let her get hurt again. Sophia met his eyes, and he saw fear there. Real, genuine fear that matched his own. I don't know how to do this. Any of this. I've never had a relationship that lasted longer than 3 months. I work 80 hours a week. I don't know how to be someone's anything. Neither do I. Not since Jessica died. I don't know how to introduce someone new into Lily's life without it feeling like I'm replacing her mother. I don't know how to date at all, let alone date my former CEO. We're a disaster waiting to happen. Absolutely. Silence stretched between them. Two people who were disasters at relationships for completely different reasons, connected by a 9-year-old who believed in magic butterflies and second chances. Lily returned with a cookie the size of her head that some kind stranger had apparently given her in the lobby. The moment of vulnerability passed, but lingered between them for the rest of the afternoon, as Lily chattered about school and showed Sophia pictures on Daniel's phone of her science fair project that had explosively failed in front of the entire class. Sophia laughed, really laughed, and Daniel committed the sound to memory, filed it away as evidence that the glacier was a myth, that underneath the corporate armor was someone warm and real and capable of joy. Walking to Daniel's truck afterward, Lily launched herself at Sophia with the unself-conscious affection of childhood. Can you come to our house next time? I have way more crayons there. Sophia looked at Daniel, question in her eyes. He nodded. I'd love to, Lily. Driving away, Daniel caught Lily's reflection in the rearview mirror. She was smiling at her napkin drawing, and something in his chest settled into place. A decision made without words. A line crossed without stepping. This was going to get complicated. But maybe complicated was worth it. 18 months after the press conference that nearly destroyed Sophia's career, Daniel sat in the audience at a tech industry conference in San Francisco, watching her present on a panel about corporate reform and ethical leadership. She'd been invited as a case study, proof that transparency could work if you were brave enough to try it. 18 months ago, I made the hardest decision of my career. I chose to publicly admit that my company had systematically failed its employees. The stock tanked. Shareholders threatened lawsuits. My board almost fired me. She paused, making eye contact with various audience members, confidence radiating from her like heat. Today, Meridian Technologies is ranked number 3 in the nation for workplace culture. Our revenue is up 34% year over year. We're attracting the best talent in the industry because we proved that doing the right thing, even when it's expensive, builds trust that translates to business success. The moderator jumped in with the question everyone was thinking. You've been very public about your relationship with Daniel Carter, who's here today. How do you respond to critics who say that relationship represents a conflict of interest? Sophia smiled, and Daniel saw confidence instead of defensiveness. Daniel left Meridian 14 months before we started dating. He built his career at another company completely independent of mine. We waited until there were no power dynamics, no corporate policies being violated, no legitimate concerns about impropriety. And you're not worried about optics? I'm done worrying about optics over substance. Daniel and I are both adults. We're both professionals. Yes, we're in a relationship. That doesn't diminish either of our achievements or compromise our integrity. Applause rippled through the audience. After the panel, reporters swarmed with questions, but Sophia navigated them with the ease of someone who'd learned to handle crisis with honesty instead of evasion. Daniel met her backstage, and she kissed him without hesitation, public, unashamed, claiming what they'd built through patience and sacrifice. That was incredible. You owned that room. I had good motivation. Knew you were watching. They walked back to their hotel through San Francisco's evening fog, rolling in from the bay. Daniel pulled Sophia into an alcove between buildings, sheltered from crowds and cameras. He knelt on concrete, still warm from the day's sun, pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel, let me say this before I lose my nerve. 18 months ago, you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You made me believe I was worth more than I thought. You fought for me when you could have protected yourself. You chose integrity over easy answers. He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single diamond. Elegant, understated, exactly Sophia's style. You and Lily taught me that success isn't about what you build. It's about who you build it with. You are the most courageous person I know, the most honest, the most willing to grow even when it hurts. Daniel, I don't deserve... Yes, you do. You deserve someone who sees you, who knows you're not perfect and loves you anyway, who will stand with you when things get hard. He looked up at her, this woman who'd been called the glacier and was actually made of fire and steel and unexpected tenderness. Sophia Bennett, will you marry me? Will you be part of our family? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice when you chose honesty over self-preservation? Sophia sank to her knees, meeting him at eye level, tears streaming down her face. When I stood in your kitchen that night, I was trying to fix my biggest mistake. I didn't know I'd find my greatest success. You and Lily showed me what actually matters, made me remember who I wanted to be. She kissed him hard, tasting like salt and promise. Yes, God, yes. Every day, yes. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her close. Both of them kneeling on a San Francisco sidewalk while the fog rolled in and the city hummed around them, building something together finally without barriers or waiting or fear. That weekend, they drove to Daniel's apartment to tell Lily together. She looked up from homework the moment they walked in, Sophia's ring catching the light. You're getting married! Daniel laughed at the immediate certainty. How did you know? Sophia has a ring, and you both look happy crying. I'm smart, remember? Sophia knelt to Lily's level, and Daniel saw vulnerability flash across her face, the fear that this was the moment everything could still go wrong. Sweetheart, I want to make sure you're okay with this. I know I can't replace your mom. I would never try. But I'd like to be your other mom, if that's okay. Lily's face got serious in the way only children could be serious about things that actually mattered. Can I have two moms? One in heaven and one here? Sophia's voice broke slightly on the answer. Yes, absolutely. Your mom will always be your mom. Nothing changes that. Lily thought about it with the same gravity she applied to everything important, then nodded. Okay then. Yes. She launched herself at Sophia and Daniel watched his daughter and his future wife hold each other, building a family from the broken pieces of loss and loneliness and choices that had seemed impossible until they weren't. 2 years after the press conference that nearly destroyed Sophia's career, Daniel stood at the front of a small chapel in Seattle's Fremont neighborhood, watching Beth walk Lily down the aisle. His daughter wore lavender, not the purple butterfly dress, she was 11 now and had different style, carrying sunflowers with the gravity of someone orchestrating world peace. Sophia appeared at the chapel doors in a simple white dress, no veil, just her dark hair falling loose the way Daniel loved. She walked down the aisle alone because she'd built herself and didn't need anyone to give her away. But her eyes never left Daniel's face, and he saw everything they'd survived reflected there. Beth officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. Daniel and Sophia came together through crisis, through failure and redemption, through choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. They built this love with patience and honesty, and the kind of courage most people only pretend to have. Daniel took Sophia's hands, feeling the rightness of it settle into his bones. I was drowning when you found me. Believed I wasn't enough. You showed me that was a lie. Taught me that my worth wasn't determined by people who exploited me, but by the integrity I brought to each day. You saved me. Let me spend our life returning the favor. Sophia's voice wavered, but held. I was lost when I found you. Had built an empire, but forgotten why. You reminded me that companies are just people, that numbers matter less than dignity, that true success is measured in lives improved, not quarterly earnings. You and Lily are my greatest achievement. They exchanged rings, simple bands that matched, and kissed while Lily cheered and Beth cried, and the small gathering of friends and reformed board members applauded. It wasn't a grand corporate wedding. It was real. At the reception in a small restaurant nearby, Sophia stood after dinner and tapped her glass. The traditional signal for a toast, but Daniel saw something more in her expression. Nervous excitement he'd learned to recognize as the prelude to big announcements. I want to thank everyone for being here, for supporting Daniel and me through some very difficult times, especially Catherine, who believed in us when we needed it most. She paused, looked around the room at faces that had become family over 2 years of transformation. Many of you know that 2 years ago, I nearly lost my company. I had to choose between protecting myself and doing what was right. Daniel helped me make that choice, helped me remember who I wanted to be. Today, I'm announcing another choice. Confusion rippled through the guests. Daniel looked confused too. She hadn't mentioned this. Effective next month, I'm stepping down as CEO of Meridian Technologies. Gasps from the guests. Daniel's eyes widened in surprise and something that might have been concern. Not because I'm being forced out, not because anything is wrong, but because I'm choosing something different. She reached for Daniel's hand, grounding herself in his presence. For 13 years, Meridian has been my entire life. I've sacrificed relationships, health, balance, everything for that company. And I built something I'm proud of. We've created real change. Culture scores highest in the industry. Employee satisfaction at all-time highs. The reforms we implemented are now industry standard. Her voice softened, became more personal. But I realized something. I spent 13 years building a company, neglected everything else, almost lost myself in the process. Daniel and Lily showed me there's more to life than quarterly earnings, more to success than market share. She looked directly at Daniel, and he saw the decision had already been made. was being announced rather than discussed, because she wanted to show him, not tell him, that she was serious about this, about them, about building a life instead of just a company. I'm not retiring. I'm pivoting. Starting a consulting firm helping other companies implement ethical reform, taking what we learned at Meridian and sharing it, but on my terms, with balance, with time for family, with time for the people who matter most. Daniel stood, pulled her close, whispered so only she could hear. You didn't tell me. I wanted to surprise you. Show you I'm serious about this, about us, about Lily, about building a life instead of just a company. He kissed her, and applause erupted, mixing with laughter and a few tears from people who understood the magnitude of what she was giving up and what she was choosing instead. That evening at their house in Ballard, bought together 6 months ago, big enough for the family they were building, Daniel found Sophia standing in Lily's doorway, watching their daughter sleep, surrounded by butterfly drawings that covered every wall. She asked me something today while we were getting ready. Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. What? She asked if I thought her mom would be happy about us. Silence for a moment. Waited with the ghost of someone Daniel had loved and lost, someone whose absence shaped everything even as life moved forward. What did you tell her? Sophia's voice came out soft, careful with the sacred ground they were treading. That I think her mom would be grateful. Grateful Lily has another person to love her. That love doesn't divide, it multiplies. That families can grow in ways we don't expect. Daniel turned her to face him, seeing vulnerability and hope mixed in equal measure. You know what I love most about you? What? You're still learning, still growing, still willing to change. Most people get to the top and stop evolving. You got to the top and realized you were climbing the wrong mountain. Sophia touched his face with gentleness that had surprised him from the start, that continued to surprise him every day. Real love isn't perfect. It's choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. We're pretty good at hard things. We're exceptional at hard things. Outside, Seattle's rain tapped against the windows with the rhythm that had become home. Inside, warmth and safety, and the steady rhythm of 3 hearts beating in sync. They'd built this from honesty and courage and the willingness to believe that broken people could create something whole. That companies could change if their leaders were brave enough to face hard truths. That families came in forms you couldn't plan but could choose every single day. Daniel thought back to the night Sophia had appeared in his kitchen, washing his dishes at 11 p.m. It had seemed insane then. Made perfect sense now. A woman who cared enough to face her failures in person, who chose honesty over self-preservation, who built an empire, then had the courage to step away from it for something more important. They stood in Lily's doorway watching her sleep, and Daniel felt the full weight of how far they'd traveled from that first shocked confrontation to this moment of quiet completion. You know what Lily told me yesterday? What? She said magic butterflies grant wishes to people who are brave, and that we're the bravest people she knows. Sophia's eyes filled, but her smile stayed steady. She's not wrong. We took a lot of risks. Yeah, but look what we got. They closed Lily's door softly and walked to their room hand in hand. 2 people who'd found each other in crisis, built something real through honesty and patience, chose each other every single day. Not perfect, but theirs. Sophia leaned into Daniel as they stood at their bedroom window, looking out at Seattle's lights blurred by rain. I love you. Even when you leave your tools all over the garage. Daniel laughed quietly, the sound of contentment mixed with affection. I love you too. Even when you schedule calls during family dinner. We're working on balance. We are. And we're getting better. The rain continued its steady percussion against glass. Inside, warmth held against the cold. Three people who'd found each other across impossible odds, who'd built a family from fragments of loss and hope, who chose each other not because it was easy, but because it was right. Daniel had walked into his apartment 18 months ago expecting darkness and silence. Found instead a woman washing his dishes, carrying truth like a weapon and vulnerability like a shield. That moment had changed everything, had taken him from exploitation to partnership, from self-doubt to confidence, from loneliness to love. Sophia had walked into his kitchen expecting to deliver bad news and accept responsibility. Found instead someone who saw her, not the glacier, not the CEO, just a woman trying desperately to fix what she'd broken. Someone who believed she could change, who stood beside her through the hardest battles, who chose her every day, even when it cost him something. They climbed into bed, Sophia curling into Daniel's side with the natural ease of 2 years of practice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, her consulting firm to build, his team at Tech Climate to manage, Lily's robotics competition to attend. The ordinary complications of a life built together, problems solved through partnership instead of shouldered alone. You know what's funny? Sophia's voice came out drowsy, already half asleep. What? If Owen hadn't been stealing, if you hadn't been working yourself to death, if I hadn't decided to come to your apartment instead of sending an email, none of this would have happened. Daniel considered that, the strange alchemy of crisis and courage that had brought them together. I wouldn't wish what he did to us on anyone. But you're right. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, if you're brave enough to face them honestly. Especially when it's hard. She'd thrown his own words back at him, the phrase he'd said at the press conference that had become something of a motto between them. Standing up for what's right matters, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Sophia's breathing evened out into sleep. Daniel stayed awake a while longer, thinking about courage and change and the strange paths life took when you stopped trying to control everything and started trusting that honesty would be enough. He thought about the 9 employees who'd suffered alongside him, now spread across Seattle in better positions, carrying forward the lessons learned. About Owen Harris awaiting sentencing, his reputation destroyed by the same lies he'd used to destroy others. About Meridian Technologies, transformed from a place that enabled exploitation to an industry leader in workplace culture. About Catherine Brennan, who'd seen potential in him when he couldn't see it in himself, who'd given him the space to grow without the complications that would have destroyed what he and Sophia were building. But mostly, he thought about Lily, sleeping down the hall surrounded by butterfly drawings, believing in magic and second chances and the power of being brave. She'd lost her mother too young, but gained another one who chose her deliberately, who loved her not from obligation, but from genuine connection, who showed up to school plays and helped with homework and drew butterflies on napkins with the same focus she brought to boardrooms. That was the real success, Daniel realized. Not the salary or the title or the vindication of his real performance data finally being recognized. The success was this: a daughter who felt safe and loved, a partner who challenged and supported him in equal measure, a life built on honesty instead of convenient lies. The rain continued its endless percussion. Seattle slept around them. And Daniel Carter, former Navy mechanic and HVAC technician who'd been told for 14 months that he wasn't good enough, held his wife close and felt the weight of being exactly enough, of being chosen, of being home. Tomorrow they'd wake up and face whatever came next, together, as they'd learned to do, with honesty and courage and the willingness to keep choosing each other, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard.